Everyone who knows me knows that Brené Brown is my #1 guide on so many things. She has written the most exquisite books and jumped to fame with her description of stories being just data with a soul. For me, that sums up the value and the power that comes from people with disabilities sharing our stories. And that is especially true for disabled people in employment, where we often have to be vulnerable in order to ask for a workplace adjustment or accommodation, when there is so much at stake. So sharing our stories that often catapults companies to go further and to go faster is better than any dry data collection exercise. It takes courage to share our unflinching truths about how we navigate our lives. We are not always born or indeed natural storytellers, and we have to learn those skills, especially at work. Let's face it, it is often in the way that we share our stories about the things at work that are inaccessible or inhumane or we cannot navigate that ultimately determine whether we get that support that we need at work or not. It is how and when and where we share those stories that largely dictate our work trajectory. And dare I say it, that not just holds the key to unlocking our future and our financial livelihoods, but it quite literally holds the key for many, many millions that come behind us and want a foothold at work. That can feel like a duty to make it easier for others to secure and sustain their financial freedom. Stories about disability and our lived experiences for me really are data with a soul. You know that moment, that big platform moment, when you share information about your backstory. It's about something you cannot do without an adjustment or an accommodation since, say, you had a spinal cord injury. Things that you cannot do that most people would take for granted. You know that moment when the audience gasp because they recognise their children or their parents or the person down the road, but they had absolutely no idea that they also have colleagues who have experienced real trauma while working day in and day out. Or the micro team moments when you're exhausted from lip reading and everybody is talking over everybody and nobody is going through the chairperson. And so you have to still yourself and you have to say, I'm deaf and I just cannot do this anymore. I cannot go on pretending. It's okay for my colleagues to pretend they are being inclusive when they won't stick to the basic and shared agreement not to talk over each other. Stories really are data with a soul. And I suppose that is what is on my mind. It's the millions of stories that I am reminded of as I look out and across the Purple Space community as we approach and move through International Day of Persons with Disabilities on the 3rd of December each year. When I created Positively Purple Movement in 2017, I wanted to do 3 things. I wanted firstly just to make it easier for us to celebrate our success, our resilience, our courage, and by using the colour purple, help connect disability resource group leaders during International Day. I wanted to make it easier for ERG leaders the world over to connect, to share best practice and network, swap notes on the methods available to enable organisations to learn directly from their own people and build a solid, connected ecosystem of doers. And lastly, I wanted to remind ourselves of all the joyful experiences that come with living with disability, sensory disability, mental health conditions, or neurodivergence. Seriously, share the fun, the absurd, the ridiculous, the positively purple stories that keep our eye on the prize. Most organisations will have between 12 and 20% of their workforce living with disability or ill health. The internal data won't bear that out and may even suggest the numbers are as low as 2 or 3%. So you get the data-driven purists finding reasons not to invest in networks or conduct a root and branch workplace adjustment process or to invest in better, more accessible technology. Instead, they want to spend vast amounts of money on HR systems that can better count us, rather than quality personal development that makes it easier for us to be who we are and share what we need. But if you let the data-driven purists in your organisation dominate the narrative on disability, you will have lost. We don't always share information about disability because that requires trust. And we don't always have the evidence that our workplaces are to be trusted. And of course, if you look outside of employment and only rely on clickbait stories of disability which perpetually share the constant doom and gloom about our lives on social media, then you really don't know how human beings tick. You seriously do not know how humans work if your job is to shout the misery. If you think International Day of Persons with Disabilities is a one-day wonder, then think again. Think instead of something you can do to build a better, more accessible working world for disabled employees. Do one thing. Take it upon yourself to understand how to build trusted workplaces. Take it upon yourself to understand what the trust dynamic is all about. Charles Feltman defines trust as choosing to risk making something important to you vulnerable to another person's actions. Distrust is what I have shared with you that is important to me is not safe with you. And in his book, The Thin Book of Trust, he shares the 4 components of trust as sincerity, reliability, competence and care. Together they define what we consider to be a person or indeed an organisation's trustworthiness. So don't tinker with your data collection method. Choose instead to demonstrate you are a colleague that can be trusted with other people's stories. The Positively Purple movement brings together over 4,000 disability ERG leaders and our allies from around the world. It is our mark of respect during International Day of Persons with Disabilities. They share their stories of courage, of vulnerability and of being. For many of us, the social model of disability acts like our North Star. It is the anchor of truth that reminds us that we are not disabled by our medical conditions and or our physical, sensory or neurodivergent differences. But it hasn't always offered the roadmap to live our life with courage in the face of other people's stuff. It didn't come with a how-to manual that would help us deal with some of the deep-seated human resistors when it comes to disability. For each and every one of us that has to navigate the soft bigotry of low or no expectation, we have to first find the courage to connect, share our stories, find the joy, find the hope, find the positive. Positively Purple is about joy. It's about building trust. It's about the lives of millions of people who want to be economically safe and secure in their working worlds. It's about stories, it's about truth, it's about tenacity and obstinance, or obstinacity as I like to call it. Purple Space wish you a fantastic International Day of Persons with Disabilities. We will see you on the airwaves.